Superman debuted in Action Comics #1 in 1938. The world of popular fiction changed forever.
These scripts until very early the next morning. I dashed over to Joe's house, which is about 10 blocks away. I made you one that the letter S be on his chest.
Right, I wanted to give him a skin-tight costume to show up.
You grew up watching Superman fly across the screen, but you never saw what was really happening behind those bright colors. Hidden inside these old cartoons are grown-up secrets, strange choices by the animators, moments that were never meant for kids, and scenes that feel very different when you watch them with adult eyes.
Oh, Superman, you were wonderful. Oh, how did you get here?
Some are clever, some are dark, and some will completely change how you remember these classics.
Listen to me, you meddling fools!
Today, we are revisiting Superman 1940s. 40 strange adult secrets kids never understood. And it all begins with a moment inside a simple phone booth. Fact 1. The first phone booth transformation ever.
Yes, I'll give you the details later, Chief. All right, Lois.
When you watched Superman as a kid, you probably thought he always changed in a phone booth. But the truth is, that idea was born right here in the early 1940s cartoons. The Mechanical Monsters is the very first time in all of Superman history where Clark Kent ducks into a booth, rips open his shirt, and becomes the Man of Steel. Before this cartoon, the comics never showed it. The radio show never used it. The Fleischer animators created a moment so iconic that it shaped the character for the next 80 years. As grown-ups, we see how clever it was, fast, clean, and instantly readable for audiences. Kids just saw magic. Adults see craft, intent, and genius. But that booth wasn't the only strange thing the animators slipped in. Fact 2. The secret birthday hidden on a fake newspaper. Most kids never notice this tiny detail, but adults catch it right away. In The Mechanical Monsters, the Daily Planet front page shows a date that makes no sense for the story. Thursday, July 19th, 1945. That is 4 years after the cartoon came out. Why would the artist choose that exact day? It turns out the date matches the real birthday of Max Fleischer, the man who produced these legendary shorts. It's like the studio left a quiet birthday card for their boss in plain sight. Kids only saw bold headlines and explosions. Adults see a sly little wink from animators who loved hiding surprises. And speaking of surprises, the next one involves Lois Lane facing a danger no kid fully understands. Fact 3. Lois was nearly melted alive.
How is that for a story, Miss Lane?
When you rewatch The Mechanical Monsters as an adult, the danger hits harder. Lois Lane isn't just in trouble. She is strapped to a metal platform being lowered toward a boiling vat of molten steel. That is not cartoon danger. That is real industrial death. As kids, we only saw Superman swooping in at the last second. As adults, we feel the fear in Lois's voice, the glow of the metal, and how close she comes to being gone forever. The Fleischer animators didn't soften it, didn't joke about it, and didn't fade away. They played it straight, like a thriller. And the funny part? This terrifying scene inspired a famous filmmaker many years later. Fact 4. These robots inspired modern anime legends. Kids saw simple metal robots marching around and stealing cash. Adults see something else, the birth of a style that shaped future animation. The robots in The Mechanical Monsters inspired Hayao Miyazaki, the master behind Spirited Away and Princess Mononoke. He borrowed their long legs, stiff posture, and gentle movements for his robot guardians in Castle in the Sky decades later. Watching the short as grown-ups, we notice how ahead of its time it really was. The Fleischer team mixed science fiction, crime, and smooth, fluid action in a way that Japanese animators admired for years. Kids love the explosions. Adults see history being written in 9 minutes. But our next secret takes us from robots to a runaway train carrying a fortune. Fact 5, $1 billion in gold during wartime.
This looks like a job for Superman.
In $1 Billion Limited, the entire plot revolves around a train hauling $1 billion in gold to the US Mint. When you're a kid, it just feels like a big treasure. As an adult, you realize how wild that number is. During the early 1940s, America was stockpiling real gold as the world slid deeper into war. This cartoon wasn't fantasy. It was reflecting a national fear that enemy agents or criminals might target the country's wealth. Lois Lane firing a machine gun, saboteurs blowing up the tracks, and Superman dragging a derailed locomotive back onto the rails suddenly feel less cartoon crazy and more like wartime anxiety drawn in Technicolor. And if you think that's intense, wait until you hear what Lois does next. Fact 6, Lois turns into an action hero with a machine gun. In $1 Billion Limited, Lois Lane does something no kid ever really processed. She grabs a dropped machine gun, swings it around like she has trained for years, and fires at the robbers while the train is speeding through the mountains. As children, we thought, wow, she is brave. As adults, we realize just how wild that moment is. A reporter firing a heavy weapon on a moving train is not normal cartoon action. It feels more like a war film than a superhero short. The recoil, the sparks, and the danger around her remind us how fearless Lois was written back then. She wasn't a damsel, she was a frontline fighter. And the train battle gets even stranger when you look at what Superman does next. Fact 7, Superman walks through a boiler explosion like nothing happened. Kids love seeing Superman shrug off danger, but adults notice the real scale of what happens in this scene. The criminals throw a bomb straight into the train's boiler. It explodes with a blast strong enough to rip metal apart and derail the whole locomotive. That kind of explosion would level a building. But Superman steps out of the smoke without a scratch, wipes some dust off, and keeps going, like it was nothing more than a popped firecracker. As a child, it feels normal because Superman is supposed to be strong. As an adult, you realize the cartoon was showing a level of destruction that belongs in a disaster movie, not a Saturday matinee. And if you think one blown-up train is wild, wait until you meet the dinosaur they thaw out next. Fact 8. The Arctic Giant was basically Godzilla. Before Godzilla, when you revisit the Arctic Giant, the whole thing feels shockingly familiar. A frozen creature is kept in a giant refrigeration chamber, it breaks loose, and then it stomps through the city like an unstoppable monster. As kids, we just saw a cool dinosaur. As adults, we realized this short predicted the entire Godzilla formula more than a decade before the famous Japanese film. Even the way the creature smashes bridges and buildings looks like early kaiju movies. The Fleischer animators built a full disaster sequence with smoke, collapsing towers, and rushing crowds long before giant monster movies became a trend. Kids saw a dinosaur chase, adults see the birth of a film genre. And the reason this monster escapes is a secret only grown-ups really notice. Fact 9. A worker's tiny mistake causes a massive disaster.
As any rise in temperature might prove dangerous.
In the Arctic Giant, the dinosaur doesn't escape because of magic or fate. It breaks out because a museum worker accidentally leaves an oil can where it falls into the cooling machine, the can jams the machinery, the refrigeration shuts off, and the giant creature slowly thaws out. As kids, we never paid attention to that quick shot. But adults instantly recognize the message. One small safety mistake in a workplace can unleash chaos. It is basically an industrial accident disguised as a monster story. The Fleischer animators slipped in a grown-up warning about responsibility, maintenance, and real-world consequences. Kids saw ice melting. Adults see a full lesson about how dangerous one simple overlook can be. And the shortcuts behind this cartoon don't stop with the story. Fact 10. The cartoon reused test footage to save money. When you watch the Arctic Giant carefully, some shots feel strangely smooth compared to others. That is because the studio reused early test animation they had created before the series even began. Those beautiful rooftop leaps and dramatic running shots were not made for this episode at all. They were recycled to cut costs and save production time. As kids, we never noticed. As adults, we see how much clever budgeting went into these shorts. The Fleischer team was producing some of the most expensive animated reels of their era, and every reused frame helped keep the lights on. It shows how skillfully they masked limitations with style. And speaking of style, the next villains arrive in a rocket shaped like a bullet. Fact 11. The Bulleteers are basically domestic terrorists. When you rewatch the Bulleteers as an adult, the plot feels shockingly modern. A group of masked criminals builds a rocket-shaped car and uses it to attack a police station, blow up a power plant, and threaten the entire city treasury. As kids, we saw a funny rocket crashing into buildings. As grown-ups, we realize these villains are not cartoon crooks. They are domestic terrorists using technology far ahead of its time. The mayor even refuses to negotiate with them, taking a hard political stance you never noticed as a child. Every scene plays like a news report, mixed with science fiction. The Bulleteers act with clear goals, high stakes, and real danger. And Lois Lane's reaction inside that rocket is even more intense. Fact 12. Lois tries to smash a terror rocket from the inside. Kids see Lois as brave. Adults see her as absolutely fearless. In the Bulleteers, she sneaks into the rocket car while the gang is preparing their next attack. The moment she gets inside, she picks up a wrench and tries to smash the controls, even though the rocket is already lifting off. She is inside a hurtling metal missile, fighting armed criminals, and still tries to stop them by hand. As a kid, you think she is just being bold. As an adult, you understand how deadly that moment really is. One wrong move, and the entire rocket would crash with her trapped inside. It is pure tension wrapped in 9 minutes of animation. And the next scientist Superman faces is even more dangerous than these crooks. Fact 13, the villain is not a thief, but a reckless scientist.
Oh, you want a story? I'll give you the greatest story of destruction the world has ever known.
In the magnetic telescope, the main threat is not a gangster, a monster, or even a spy. It is a respected scientist who becomes so obsessed with pulling a comet toward Earth that he ignores every warning around him. Kids see a glowing machine and a grumpy professor. Adults see a chilling reminder of how real-world disasters often start. One stubborn expert who refuses to listen. The cartoon shows the city government begging him to shut the telescope down, the police trying to stop him, and the professor firing back by turning the machine to full power anyway. It feels more like a meltdown at a research lab than a superhero story. And the way Superman tries to stop the comet is something no child ever noticed. Fact 14, Superman becomes a living power cable. One of the strangest moments in the magnetic telescope is something grown-ups notice instantly. When the comet starts falling toward the city, the power lines to the telescope are cut. To restart the machine, Superman grabs both ends of the broken cable and lets thousands of volts run through his body to reconnect the circuit. As a kid, you think, oh, Superman is strong. As an adult, you realize he literally becomes part of a giant electrical system. This is not a punch or a leap, it is advanced electrical engineering mixed with superhero strength. The animators showed Superman doing something no human could survive, yet made it look simple and heroic. And right after that, Lois gets caught in a moment that fools even the viewers. Fact 15, Lois thinks she is kissing Superman, but she isn't. In one cleverly staged scene from the magnetic telescope, Lois kisses the silhouette of Superman after he saves the city. But when the light shifts, she realizes she has been kissing Clark Kent the whole time. Kids laugh, because it is a funny trick. Adults notice how carefully the animators lit the scene to make the silhouettes line up, almost like a classic romantic comedy. It also shows Clark teasing Lois in a gentle way you only appreciate when you are older. The moment adds layers to their relationship, showing humor, affection, and a bit of mischief. It is one of the rare times the cartoon lets Clark be playful. And the next villain Superman faces brings danger from beneath the ocean floor. Fact 16, a Native American scientist tries to sink Manhattan.
You have a newspaper? Publish the truth. Have the island vacated immediately.
In Electric Earthquake, the villain isn't a mob boss or a mad professor. He is a Native American scientist who claims Manhattan was stolen from his people. When the city leaders brush him off, he uses an underwater machine to shake the island apart. As kids, we only saw a strange man in a suit pressing buttons. As adults, we understand the heavier story underneath. A man pushed aside by society, angry at broken promises, and willing to use science as revenge. The cartoon mixes uncomfortable stereotypes with a real historical wound. His secret base is under the water, reached by an elevator hidden in a fishing shack, and the destruction he causes feels frighteningly real. And the next secret is about how this cartoon finally reveals the city's true identity. Fact 17. This is the first time the cartoons call the city Manhattan. Most early Superman shorts used Metropolis, a made-up city that could be anywhere. But in Electric Earthquake, the animators slip in a moment that changes everything. A police dispatcher refers to the location as Manhattan, confirming that this story takes place in a real American city. As kids, we never noticed. As adults, it suddenly feels bigger. When the island shakes, it is not a random place. It is Manhattan buildings, subways, and millions of people at risk. The story stops being a simple cartoon disaster and becomes a near real-world crisis. It also explains why the villain targets the island specifically. His anger is tied to history, and the setting makes that even clearer. And his underwater base hides another secret no child ever caught. Fact 18. The villain's underwater lab is straight out of spy movies. Kids see a strange round room with blinking lights. Adults recognize something much cooler. This cartoon basically invented the classic underwater villain lair years before spy films made it famous. The scientist rides a secret elevator down to a steel pod under the ocean floor, where he controls giant earthquake beams pointed at Manhattan. Everything inside looks like a mix of pulp, science fiction, and early James Bond. There is advanced machinery, thick riveted metal walls, and controls that can bring down bridges and buildings. As grown-ups, we realize how expensive and imaginative this animation really was. No studio was doing sets like this at that time, and the next short pulls Superman into a fight with nature itself. Fact 19, Superman battles a volcano. While Lois is trapped on the crater, in Volcano, the danger doesn't come from crooks or monsters. It comes from nature. Clark and Lois travel to a small island to report on a rumbling volcano. When the eruption starts, Lois ends up stranded right on the crater's edge as lava begins to overflow. Kids see Superman swoop in and save her. Adults see the nightmare of a reporter stuck in a deadly natural disaster with no safe escape. The entire village is at risk, the mountain shakes violently, and the lava threatens to swallow everything in minutes. Superman isn't just stopping a villain, he is fighting time, gravity, and nature itself. And the next episode pushes the danger even higher, this time at a chaotic circus. Fact 20. This last Fleischer short turns into a full circus disaster.
Fine thing. Ace newspaper woman scares monkey.
Ace newspaper woman reviews circus.
Terror on the Midway might be the most intense episode the Fleischer Studio ever produced, and it was their final Superman cartoon before the series moved to a new studio. A giant gorilla breaks loose, animals stampede, cages crash open, and the circus turns into a disaster zone. Kids just see wild action. Adults see a scene built like a real emergency. Crowds panicking, workers trying to control animals, and a child nearly being hurt as chaos spreads. The gorilla, named Gigantic, clearly takes inspiration from King Kong, and the destruction feels surprisingly serious for a 9-minute short. It is a dramatic farewell from the team that defined Superman's early look. And what comes next is one of the most controversial Superman cartoons ever made. Fact 21, a wartime cartoon filled with racist caricatures. When you watch Japatours as an adult, it feels very different from how it felt as a kid. The short is filled with wartime propaganda, including harsh caricatures of Japanese spies. As children, we didn't understand the context. As grown-ups, we recognize how common these stereotypes were right after the attack on Pearl Harbor. The villains try to steal a giant American bomber, destroy a runway, and take Lois hostage. The cartoon reflects real fear and anger from that era, and it shows how animation was used as a tool for morale during the war. It is uncomfortable to watch today, but it is also an important piece of history that shows how stories were shaped by the world outside the theater. And the plane in this episode hides another strange detail grown-ups always catch. Fact 22, the bomber is so huge, it acts like a flying aircraft carrier. In Japatours, the stolen bomber is enormous. As a kid, the size just looks cool. As an adult, you realize the plane is so large and heavy that it could never actually fly. It has rooms, hallways, cargo areas, and even space for cars. Aviation experts say a plane like that would break apart under its own weight. But in the cartoon, it cruises through the sky like it is nothing. The animators were showing off America's wartime power by exaggerating its technology to almost impossible levels. It is pure patriotic fantasy mixed with dramatic action. Kids think it is awesome. Adults see how the cartoon was boosting national confidence in the middle of World War II. And when the heroes reach that giant plane, Lois ends up in even more danger. Fact 23. Lois becomes a hostage to keep Superman away. As adults, we understand something heavy in Japatours that kids never notice. Lois Lane is taken hostage not just to keep her quiet, but to force Superman to stay back. The spies threaten to throw her out of the plane if he interferes. It is one of the few times the cartoon shows a villain using Lois as a literal bargaining chip. Her life becomes the price for stopping the mission. Kids see a tense moment. Adults understand the emotional stakes. Superman wants to act, but if he makes one wrong move, Lois pays the price. It adds a seriousness that makes the whole short feel darker. And the next episode takes the danger from the skies to the city streets. Fact 24. A fake Superman makes the whole city turn against him. In Showdown, a criminal dresses like Superman and uses his disguise to commit robberies all over the city. Kids think it is a funny trick. Adults see how damaging it would be. Newspapers print headlines claiming Superman has gone bad. Police chase him. Citizens run in fear. The cartoon shows how fragile a hero's reputation really is. One imposter can undo years of trust. Clark Kent watches people lose faith in the Man of Steel, and you can feel how personal it is for him. The story is basically about identity theft long before that idea existed in modern life. And the secret hideout of the real criminal is even stranger than the impersonation Fact 25. The mob boss has a trap-filled office straight out of a noir movie. When Superman tracks the imposter to his boss, the hideout looks like something adults will instantly recognize from old crime films. The office has a trapdoor in the floor, electrified metal bars, hidden escape routes, and reinforced walls. Kids think it is just a spooky room. Adults see classic noir set design, the kind used in gangster movies of the 1930s and 1940s. Every corner of the office is built to kill or trap someone. The boss even throws the fake Superman into the trapdoor to protect his own reputation. It feels dark, gritty, and surprisingly mature for an animated short. And the next episode drops Superman right into the middle of a war zone overseas. Fact 26. Superman becomes a secret saboteur in Japan. In 11th Hour, the tone changes completely. Superman is not in Metropolis. He is not stopping bank robbers or mad scientists. He is in wartime Japan, sneaking out every night at exactly 11 o'clock to blow up ships, bridges, and military targets. As kids, we only saw explosions and cool action. As adults, we realize this is Superman acting as a one-man sabotage unit. He is hiding in an occupied building with Lois, working in secret, and destroying enemy equipment without being caught. It is one of the few times Superman acts like a covert operative instead of a superhero. The cartoon feels more like a spy thriller than a comic book story. But the real danger appears when the enemy realizes the saboteur might be someone close by. Fact 27. Lois is used as hostage leverage against Superman. In 11th Hour, the Japanese authorities post citywide warnings that the mysterious saboteur must stop or Lois Lane will be executed. Adults feel the seriousness of this instantly. As kids, we barely understood what execution meant. Lois is marched to a firing squad, soldiers raise their rifles, and the countdown begins. Superman is forced into an impossible choice: reveal himself and be captured, or let Lois die. He makes a third choice, racing to the scene, stopping bullets in midair, and rescuing her at the last second. This moment shows how deeply the wartime setting changed the tone of the cartoons. The stakes are life and death, not cartoon danger. And the sabotage in this episode grows even more intense when you look at his next target. Fact 28. Superman destroys a harbor full of warships. In the same short, Superman dives into a harbor loaded with enemy vessels and begins ripping through them one by one. As kids, this looks like a fun underwater fight. As adults, it hits differently. He is sinking military ships, smashing steel hulls, and causing explosions that light up the entire shoreline. This is not crime fighting. It is wartime destruction on a massive scale. The animators show cargo barrels detonating, fuel tanks catching fire, and waves rolling across the docks. It feels like a dramatic war film squeezed into a few minutes of animation. Superman is still a hero, but he is also part of the war effort now. And the war themes continue in the next short, which begins with a mysterious death. Fact 29. A night watchman is found dead at a weapons plant. Destruction. Incorporated opens with a shock that kids never understood. An elderly night watchman from a munitions factory is found dead in a swamp. Someone murdered him to cover up sabotage inside the plant. As grown-ups, we see the darkness instantly. Lois and Clark go undercover to investigate, pretending to be factory workers. Inside, they find hidden explosives, criminals posing as employees, and a plan to blow up the building from the inside while workers are still on shift. The whole cartoon plays like a gritty crime drama mixed with a wartime thriller. It is one of the heaviest openings in the entire series. But the timing of the cartoon's release makes it feel even stranger. Fact 30. This dark, violent cartoon was released on Christmas Day. It sounds unbelievable, but Destruction Incorporated, a story about murder, sabotage, and war profiteering, was released on Christmas Day. As kids, we never knew that. As adults, the contrast feels almost surreal. Families in 1942 could walk into a theater on Christmas morning and watch a cartoon that begins with a dead worker and ends with a weapons plant exploding. The studio clearly wanted to reflect the wartime mood, even during the holidays. It shows how deeply the real world shaped these shorts. They were not just entertainment, they were part of a country processing fear, loss, and uncertainty. And the next cartoon takes an even stranger turn into ancient tombs and resurrected giants. Fact 31. A pharaoh child with giant suicide guards. In The Mummy Strikes, the backstory is something kids never fully understood. The cartoon tells us about a young pharaoh named King Tush, only a child when he ruled. But his royal guards were giant warriors who swore to protect him even after death. When the boy king died, every guard drank poison and took his own life so he could serve the pharaoh in the afterlife. As kids, we only saw tall mummies marching around. As adults, we feel the weight of that grim ritual. It is dark, tragic, and far too heavy to grasp when you are young. The cartoon blends ancient history with eerie fantasy in a way that feels almost shocking today. And the mystery gets deeper when a modern scientist turns up dead. Fact 32. A modern murder mystery hides under the mummy plot. Kids think The Mummy Strikes is just about spooky tombs and walking giants. Adults notice it is actually built like a detective story. A museum researcher is found dead in a lab, a syringe lies beside him, and another man is wrongly blamed for the murder. Lois and Clark try to uncover the truth, and each clue pushes them closer to danger. The whole setup feels like a crime drama with ancient curses added on top. The cartoon moves between a police inquiry, a courtroom flashback, and a secret lab filled with suspicious evidence. As grown-ups, we can see how the writers mixed pulp adventure with a full-blown mystery, and the moment the giant guards return to life is even stranger. Fact 33 giant mummies are revived by a strange fluid of life. In one of the most unsettling scenes in the entire series, the giant guards are brought back to life using a mysterious substance called the fluid of life. Kids see it as magic. Adults see something closer to early science fiction, a glowing liquid that wakes ancient bodies like a reanimation experiment. When the giants rise, they smash through walls, chase Lois, and collapse the tomb around everyone. The tension feels almost like a horror movie. Superman has to fight the huge creatures while the entire underground chamber begins to fall apart. It is intense, loud, and filled with danger. The Fleischer animators push the limits of what a kid's cartoon could show. And the next cartoon goes even deeper into wartime fear and strange disguises. Fact: 34 Nazis hide in robes and control a jungle tribe. In Jungle Drums, the villains are Nazis hiding deep inside an African jungle. As children, we did not understand the symbols or the uniforms. Adults recognize it instantly. The Nazis pretend to be robed mystics to control a local tribe using staged rituals, fake magic, and fear. Behind a hidden stone wall is a full radio outpost sending coded messages to enemy forces. The short mixes adventure with real wartime anxiety. Lois is captured, tied to a stake, and almost executed before Superman bursts in. The cartoon shows propaganda, manipulation, and secret enemy bases. Things that go over kids' heads but feel very real to adults. And the ending of this cartoon is one of the strangest in the entire series. Fact 35. Hitler shows up listening to an American radio broadcast. The ending of Jungle Drums is so bizarre that many adults forget it even happened. After Superman destroys the secret Nazi outpost, the scene cuts all the way to Europe. Adolf Hitler himself is shown in a room, listening to a radio report about how his forces failed. He smashes the radio in anger, then awkwardly changes the station like he is flipping through channels. As a kid, you hardly process it. As an adult, it is shocking to see a real dictator appear in a Superman cartoon. It shows how deeply the war shaped every story, even in animation meant for families. And now we reach the final episodes, where Superman dives underground into an even stranger world. Fact 36. Lois acts like a war photographer at the circus. In Terror on the Midway, Lois is not just some scared reporter running from animals. Watch it again as an adult. While the giant gorilla and the other animals are tearing the circus apart, Lois keeps snapping photos in the middle of pure chaos. A little girl is trapped, workers are shouting, the crowd is panicking, and Lois is still trying to document everything. Kids see a woman with a camera. Adults see someone acting like a frontline war photographer, risking her life to tell the story. It adds a very grown-up layer to her character. She is not only Superman's friend, she is also a professional who will not put the camera down. And the monster she is photographing has a secret movie cousin you probably know. Fact 38. These shorts used real actors to make Superman move like a man. One strange adult secret hiding in all these episodes is how human Superman looks when he moves. The Fleischer team used a technique called rotoscoping, which means they filmed real actors and then traced over the footage frame by frame. As kids, we just thought the animation looked smooth. As adults, we notice the realistic weight in his steps, the way his shoulders shift, and how natural his punches and landings feel. That is because a real person acted them out first. This gave the cartoons a serious, grown-up look, very different from bouncy slapstick shorts of the same era. It made Superman feel like a live-action hero drawn in ink. And the cost of making him move that well was another secret most viewers never knew. Fact 39. Each Superman cartoon cost more than many full shorts combined. Another detail kids never understood. These Superman cartoons were shockingly expensive. Each one cost far more than a normal animated short of the time. The studio poured money into rich backgrounds, realistic motion, and full orchestral music. When you rewatch episodes like The Mechanical Monsters, Volcano, or The Mummy Strikes, you can feel that budget in every frame. Glowing city lights, steam, smoke, shadows, and flowing capes. As adults, we realized these were prestige projects, meant to impress grown-ups as much as entertain children. The studio gambled that stunning quality would keep audiences coming back, and all of these choices, from the money to the mood, lead to one last big secret. Fact 40. These kids' cartoons were really made for the adults in the theater too. When you put all these episodes together, the war themes, the murder mysteries, the near executions, the propaganda, the King Kong echoes, the giant bombers, the sabotage factories, and Hitler himself listening to the radio, you start to see the real picture. These were not simple children's cartoons. They were short films playing before newsreels in real theaters, aimed at families living through a world war. Kids saw bright colors, flying capes, and monsters. Adults saw reflections of fear, pride, anger, and hope. That is the biggest strange secret of all. The 1940s Superman cartoons were speaking to two audiences at once. And now that you've seen them with grown-up eyes, you will never watch them the same way again. Thanks for watching this deep dive into the strange, hidden, and grown-up secrets behind the Superman 1940s cartoons. If you love classic animation, vintage heroes, retro comic history, or old Hollywood stories, make sure to stick around. There are plenty more forgotten treasures coming your way. Hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more American nostalgia, secret cartoon history, and vintage pop culture stories. See you in the next one. Truth, justice, and a whole lot of old school magic.